How do we allow a gunman to come into our children's school? How do they get through security? What security is there? There's no metal detectors. The gunman, a crazy person, just walks right into the school, knocks down the window of my child's door, and starts shooting her, and killing her. President Trump, you say, what can you do? You can stop the guns from getting into these children's hands. Put metal detectors at every entrance to the schools. What can you do? You can do a lot. This is not fair to our families, that our children go to school and have to get killed. I just spent the last 2 hours putting the burial arrangements for my daughter's funeral, who's 14. President Trump, please do something. Do something. Action! We need it now! These kids need safety now!
Good afternoon. It's high noon here at WLINY. It's February 16th, 2018. This is a roundtable discussion, and it is a much-needed roundtable discussion. The question we are asking today is, how safe are our children here on Long Island? You know, with everything that's been happening in the news lately, you know, we tend to dismiss and we tend to forget. We tend to forget the first graders and children that were killed at Sandy Hook. We tend to forget Columbine. We tend to forget the things that have happened. You know, when you think about it and you check and you really research it, the amount of school shootings that have happened since even here, even this month, from the beginning of the year till now, it's got to stop. Somewhere along the line, it's got to stop. And we're here today, of course, with a special version of Everything Matters with Ed Muniz and David Zier, because we have to ask that question. We need an answer to that question. And I think we have assembled an amazing group here this morning, and hopefully the question will be answered today. And here's Ed and Dave.
Thank you, Eric Hauptman. Appreciate the intro. Our condolences and prayers go out to the families and the victims of that tragedy in Parkland, Florida. That's first and foremost. This roundtable discussion is non-political. All right, this is not about politics. We're trying to figure out and come up with solutions, real solutions to protect our children. That's how societies advance, right? Is through education and protecting our children. So I'm here with my co-host, David Zier. Dave.
Hi. Hello, everybody. We feel like we were just here on Wednesday for a normal show, but with the events that took place, we were planning on coming back next week on Wednesday and reporting to you from CPAC next week, down in Washington. So, this is important stuff.
So we've assembled, Eric and I have assembled an incredible group of men and women to discuss, our children's safety here on Long Island. And I view Long Island, we talk about this all the time, we view Long Island as a microcosm of our country.
Well, we are. I think that our parents here are generally a little bit, better off financially, maybe have a better family unit, some of the other areas of the country. And, we haven't had, the school shootings like, in other places. So, but it's really important. We've been asking since last year.
We're not immune to it.
Last February, I went to Mike Fitzpatrick, Assemblyman in the 3rd District in the New York State Assembly, and asked him, to pursue getting armed security in schools, along with you, Ed, and with our group, the American Patriots Initiative, that I'm involved with. And we thought it was really important. And, we were told that there's a lot of legal complications to that, maybe even having to rescind the SAFE Act and redo it.
Or an amendment.
So it wasn't going to be an easy task, but we've been discussing it.
We're talking about it for 3 years.
And maybe it's time.
I've been talking about it for 3 years. And we need an assemblyman or woman to step up and propose legislation, and I'd be more than willing to sit down with them and go through what we need to do to protect our children. But let's do this first. Let's introduce our panel here today.
Yes.
To my left here is Don Longo. Don, say a few words. I know you're retired sergeant. You have your own company.
Retired Suffolk County Police, subject matter expert in active shooter incident survival. I have Don Longo Investigations and Consulting, and I also partnered with Matt with Radius Investigations about 6 months ago just to get this information out more. We've actually been doing active shooter survival lectures and training for about 5 years.
And we're going to get into the run, hide, fight.
Absolutely.
I've been a big proponent for it. I mean, I know my school district where my kids go, they do 8 fire drills a year. They do 4 lockdown drills, but nothing where they have any noise of a firearm or, a blank or something where they understand, where that's coming from. So we're going to talk about that. This is your partner, Matthew Seifer. Seifer, I'm sorry. Please.
Welcome, Matt.
Thank you very much for having me. My name is Matthew Seifer. I'm a registered armed guard within the state of New York. I'm also a licensed private investigator and a certified instructor through the Department of Criminal Justice Services as well. Part and parcel to why Don and I got together is because of him being a subject matter expert and my being a private investigator and a security consultant. We both felt when we met each other that there was a need for this type of information to get out there, and so Don and I have been literally on the road, on talk shows like this, getting the word out about situational awareness and understanding exactly what you just brought up, Ed, as far as what a gunshot sounds like. Different things like that. People have not, they're children, young adults that have never handled a gun or even seen a gun, and we're the type of people that can instruct them like that.
Absolutely, and I've been doing the same thing as well. And just so you know, when you think about it, in the last 20 years, can you think of a major fire that took the lives of students and teachers inside a school? I mean, can you think about it?
Not one.
No, and that's one of the points. A lot of the schools have drills for fires. A lot of the schools have drills for tornadoes, depending on where the school is located.
Yes.
They don't have, not only don't they have enough active shooter drills, but a lot of the drills are not done properly, and the instruction isn't done properly.
Correct.
A lot of the schools will only teach lockdown only or lockout only, and that's great if the shooter's not in the building. If he's in the building, you're asking for a Sandy Hook massacre.
Correct.
I agree. Okay, and to my right there, we have Manuel Villar, right?
Yep, Manny Villar.
Manny Villar, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
You are the president of the New York State PBA.
Yes, the founding president of the Police Benevolent Association of New York State.
And you're an active sergeant in New York State Parks.
Active sergeant, 34 years with the New York State Park Police.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you. We represent the New York State University Police, the New York State Park Police, the New York State Environmental Conservation Police, and the New York State Forest Rangers. So if you were to exclude the New York City police unions, we're actually the 5th biggest police union in New York State. We range, our members police a host of services from educational environments to mass gatherings in state parks. I mean, we all know Jones Beach, air show, and all kind of things, to wilderness rescues on the top of mountains in the Adirondacks
and let me
the
tell you
Catskills.
something, the concerts in parks, they're not immune to active shooters either.
We absolutely
and terrorist attack. I mean, that's wide open.
It is wide open.
You
We take it very, very seriously. I've been all over the papers, obviously, over the last several years, speaking to the fact that how state parks are understaffed and we don't have enough state park police officers, to the point now where we've actually determined that we feel as a PBA that we no longer have faith in New York State Parks. So we've actually have legislation to merge the state park police with the New York State Troopers. So we have better assets and better resources to move those assets around, because there's only 250 state park police officers statewide. This is 3,500, 4,000 troopers.
Yep.
It's just a matter of the numbers. And we're constantly, just to bring it right back here to Long Island, the visitation in state parks on Long Island is around 21 million visitors. Now, contrast that to New York State population. There's only 19 million people in the entire state of New York.
Right.
So every person in the state of New York
again,
come 3 times.
we're talking about soft targets. Obviously schools are the number one soft target. Parks, right? When you're understaffed and don't have the adequate resources for policing, we just got a threat on the Port Jeff Ferry. There's a bomb threat. That's a soft target. There's no
Correct.
security at all. You know, I take that ferry for the last 10 years with my son traveling, my daughter soccer and lacrosse.
My wife was just on it a couple weekends ago.
And I cannot believe that I drive my car on and there's nobody checking my trunk, nobody. I don't care about being hassled. I want to be safe.
Right.
You know, and to me, it's a disgrace. And we have another guest here, Mary Calamia.
Hi, Mary.
Hi, how are you?
Mary is a counselor, and why don't you explain what you do, Mary?
Sure, I'm a clinical social worker, and I work with children, adolescents. I also happen to have a lot of school personnel on my caseload, not because they're any more in need than anybody else, just by who refers to me. So I work with a lot of teachers, school personnel, adolescents. We're in a mental health crisis like you cannot believe. The schools are not what they used to be.
There's a lot have to do with addiction. I know the opioid crisis is hitting hard.
Yeah, but
the heroin
that's
epidemic.
Well, overprescription of medication.
That's just a small part of it. There's a whole societal breakdown that is, oh yeah, sorry, I'm looking at you. Societal breakdown, breakdown of the family, breakdown of family structure, preoccupation with technology, as the
addiction of the phone.
babysitter.
Desensitizing.
Yep.
Desensitized to violence. These kids they speak a language. If you saw the Instagram from Cruz's Instagram, the Instagram post, I couldn't even decipher the language that those kids were speaking to each other in.
With all the acronyms.
The acronyms and the little phrases that they use. It's a language we as adults don't even understand. I wouldn't even know if half of those things was a threat. We have the kids are scared. They're poised to follow instruction. They're not poised to think on their feet and maybe take action. Like as a kid, I probably would have thought to grab a nearby fire extinguisher and you know spray foam in a guy's eyes if I suggest that to a kid. They're like, oh no, they tell us what to do. They follow rules. They follow rules.
Mary, let me ask you a question. So I have experience in both Catholic, private education, and public schools. I have family all over the public school system. I'm a product of both. These things aren't happening in the Catholic schools. These things, and when I look at my local school district, no names right now, you know, and some of the districts around me, it's a horror show. Mm-hmm. What happened in the school system that the leadership in the schools are not allowed to engage these students about the ethics and the moral standards and becoming an upright citizen, and why are they being left in the dirt? And, you know, the family unit breakdown is no doubt, because the parents that I see out there, you know, Catholic school is expensive, but a lot of people send their kids there, don't make a lot of money, and it's that sacrifice that they make.
Let me throw this in the mix.
Let
me throw this in the mix.
I think we need a return to that.
So what we're seeing, what I'm seeing as a parent, and I'm going to pull my PI
have
hat
children?
off. Absolutely. In
Okay,
fact,
and you have children as well?
No.
No child. Okay.
the morning of Parkland shooting, my wife and I were at an elementary school, no names. We were interviewing the school to see if my daughter would like going there. And my wife kept on nudging me, tell her what you do, tell her what you do, tell her what you do. And myself personally, I'm looking around, I'm seeing if the security measures are in place. Nothing was in place, and I wasn't impressed. However, the impression that I got from the administrator at the school was that it was a polished answer that she gave me when I said, what are you doing for my child's safety? What are you doing? Right. And the bottom line is that on either side of the aisle, you can make the blame on gun control, you can make the blame on mental health, and it really is a matter of the dynamics of parenting.
Yes.
That's really what it falls down to, the dynamics of being a responsible, caring, loving parent.
Can
That's what it
I
boils
speak
down
to that? Because I also a hybrid Catholic school and public school, and vast difference even in the 70s when I went to school. But now they have something in the schools called social and emotional learning standards. It came in just before Common Core, where the schools are weaving what they call social and emotional learning, teaching them how to be good citizens into the literature, into the work that they do in school. But me, as an individual and as a therapist, this should come from the home. I don't want the schools.
Absolutely.
I don't want the schools deciding what a good citizen is. I want to decide what a good
Catholic
citizen
schools
is.
give you that guidance. They give you spiritual guidance as
That's
well, without getting into
difference.
religion. You know, and you know, I just think there's so much of more of a focus on becoming a whole person. And it's something that's been left out of the equation. And there's so many other issues here. There's school safety, you know, I'm not just boiling it down to that, but it really bothers me. It bothers me every day.
Well, and there's a loss of
I feel like the teachers aren't allowed to engage the students without a threat of a lawsuit
the PC police will come out and bust them. I've had teachers referred to me for therapy for telling a kid, oh, don't smoke pot, you're going to turn into a loser. I've had
Mary,
that
look,
kind of thing happen.
You're an expert on this, and if I saw some interviews of the kids that went to the high school down in Parkland, and some of them said, no, this kid was weird, and they always talked about, if there was going to be some sort of violent act, this is the guy that was going to do it. They called him strange, they called him weird. And nobody, I guess, took this serious. Is it because those words could be considered bullying in our PC world now? Like, if you label a kid weird,
and you can get in trouble for that.
You get in trouble for that.
However, the centralization, without naming superstars, such as an athlete that is now transgender, I'm not going to go into specific names, widely accepted now. So if we're able to accept that, the labeling really shouldn't be an issue by any stretch of the imagination,
right?
Especially if it's dealt with professionally.
But it's a good point. We spent a generation or two, making sure that kids aren't, felt isolated and become these people. Because I think part of it is if a kid does get bullied and does get put in a situation and he doesn't have a family unit at home and he doesn't have any supervision going on, he's going to get the gun. Like the Dylan Harris and Eric Klebold were out practicing with their shotguns in the mountains every day and building bombs in the room because their parents weren't there. Yeah. But they were considered outcasts in their school.
One of the things
that Trenchcoat Mafia Club, nobody liked them.
One of the things that Don and I lean very heavily on is the recognition and understanding of the signs to look for and early intervention. Don, if you will.
Well, with this last shooting, it seems like every time there's an active shooter incident, there are certain buzzwords that people start talking about. They'll talk about the bump stock from Las Vegas. They'll talk about mental health.
They want to blame the guns. I know, the whole, right.
This particular time, a lot of the talking heads, a lot of the people, they're talking about those issues, but they're centering on the fact that there were so many signs that people just ignored that the shooter gave off beforehand. What people don't realize is that in most active shooter incidents, 65% of them could be prevented because the shooter gives off what we call leakage.
Well, this seems extreme. I mean, there were hundreds of signs.
Absolutely. School shootings, it's 73%. 73% of school shootings can be avoided if people recognize the signs, if they take the right steps, if security measures are in effect. And it's not just one thing. It's not just that everybody has to be willing to report it. There has to be a combination of factors involved.
Let me shift it back to you, Mary. As
Can
far
I just
as what you see in the past, as far as early intervention, where do you see it, and how does it normally progress down the line?
I think that we've had. I've been doing this for 23 years, and in 23 years, in working with adolescents, I have seen a shift downward in the age at which sociopathy even begins to emerge. We're talking like pre-K interventions at this point. We can't wait till they get to the high schools.
But as it was stated during this conversation, is that how do you stigmatize a child at such a young age?
And maybe that stigmatization can be a cause for that kid to be growing up thinking he's different.
It's definitely a gray area, and I think we need more education. And I think a little less PC,
absolutely,
a little more reality,
absolutely,
a little more logic to our process.
Let me say this. So, as a parent myself personally, and being where my wife and I were the morning of, and then watching this unfold, and then talking about it with Don, and listening to my employees tell me about their children and their experiences, and then finding out that a good close colleague of mine had a relative die in the shooting last night. And for something like that, for the realism, you can place blame everywhere you want, but it's time to take responsibility.
Solutions.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have on the phone with us former County Executive Steve Levy. Steve, welcome to the show, Steve.
Oh, thanks, Eric. Great to be with you.
All right.
Hello, County Executive Ed Munoz. How are you?
Steve, it's Dave Zier.
Hey, Ed. Wonderful. Thanks. Wonderful to be joining you.
So Steve, now, of course, you and I had a discussion about this yesterday, but can you chime in here and give your comments with regards to, well, the question that we're asking. Now, you were a former Suffolk County executive,
right.
But the thing is, so if you're sitting in the Denison building right now, and I come into your office and I look you straight in the eye and I say, is my child safe on Long Island? What do you say to me, Steve? What's the response?
Well, statistics typically, yes, they're safe, but it only takes one incident, as we saw, and there could be massive carnage. So you say, all right, we've taken precautions. For instance, in Nassau County, they spent about $3 million in a knee-jerk reaction to get this buzzer placed in all of the schools, and I'm questioning what the heck does that do? You know, everyone has a cell phone where you can call 911. Wouldn't that money be better spent in making sure that we have security officers who have a gun on campus to deal with this, or to have bulletproof glass, or to have automatic lockdowns in every classroom?
Steve.
But none of these things give you 100% protection. You can only nibble away at it and try to take whatever precautions you can to limit the possibility of these things happening in the future. You can't totally wipe it out.
No, and Steve, you know, I'm a retired police officer, and there are evil people in the world. There are bad people, okay? And you know, we could deal with bad people. Evil is in a world of its own. And, you know, I've stared in the eyes of evil people. You know, my whole push, and I've been talking about this for 3 years on my show, is that I'm looking for that state assemblyman or state assemblywoman to step up. I will work with them, sit down, and try to amend the New York School Safe School Act, and allow our retired police officers that are, majority of them are working our local schools on Long Island, you know, or active cops, you know, moonlighting for a second job. And, you know, we all have licenses to carry firearms. I mean, I have a license to carry, I have an HR 218, I can carry anywhere in the United States. I can get on a plane. You know, but I can't go watch my son's football game with a firearm on me, you know, because it's a gun-free zone. What's your take on let's getting maybe some comprehensive legislation so we can amend this and have these school security guards, you know, armed, concealed weapons?
I'm 100% in agreement with you. I heard you someone say a little earlier about we have to get past the political correctness, and that's one of the problems. You know, you have a big lobby group out there who believes that, oh, if we just keep guns off of campus, that will ensure that we won't have a shootout. Well, you have these nutcases who are not going to abide by any laws, come in and try to mow down our children. Sometimes the only thing that can stop them, as they say, is the good guy with the gun. And you're not talking about having some random teacher having a gun.
No.
You're talking about a highly trained, retired police officer, and I have many of my friends are retired New York PD who are now working security
and you know what
in our school.
And what I'm proposing, Steve,
want that individual to have a firearm to protect those kids.
Absolutely. I mean, we're trained to run to the shots, not away from them. You know, and I'm proposing, you know, not just arming every retired cop that's working school security. I mean, I'm proposing specialized training, you know, special tactics every year.
Let me add this. So what we do as a community, we evaluate, we take in, and we assess the issue immediately in front of us, right?
Yep.
So we're all looking for a solution. Tell me I'm wrong, correct?
That's why we're here.
The immediate solution is harden the target, fortify the target.
Yes.
And the first line of defense is put somebody there, an individual who's been trained, who's been vetted, who doesn't present with mental health issues, who's authorized to carry a weapon.
Right. Yeah. I mean, listen,
harden that target.
I would even go to the step that if you have a school security officer that's a retired cop and he's going to apply for a special license to carry inside a school, you know, his medical records have to be opened up, so it's a tougher vetting spot.
Correct. Absolutely.
You know,
There's something I want.
Manny, go ahead.
Because of my state representation and I represent state police officers, I was there the night the SAFE Act was passed. I'm in the legislature all the time, year in and year out. I spend a tremendous amount of time up in Albany. When the SAFE Act was a politically driven act that was literally rammed through the state legislature.
Overnight.
When it actually passed, there was a provision in there that made it illegal for my members, the state university police officers, to carry firearms on state college campuses.
And that was the discussions we had.
And that had to be amended. That had to be amended. Yeah,
that
had to be amended. So the SAFE Act, all things said and done, is a politically driven act that was not necessarily crafted to do what it needed to do. And as to your point with a hardened target, yeah, there needs to be some, and that's what you're saying, there needs to be some active legislation. And there's going to need to be some state mandate. There's going to need to be some sort of funding that goes along with that. There's going to need a lot of different things that has to happen. And somebody has to pick the ball up and run with this.
How many children had to die before Leandra's law was passed?
It's true. Steve, let me ask you a question. What would be the first process on trying to amend this to arm our security officers, men and women, inside schools?
Well, the first question is there a state law that presently prohibits that from happening? If there's no state law to that effect, then it could be done on a case-by-case basis, school by school. But again, there's this mentality within school districts that, we don't want a gun on campus because somehow the trained law enforcement guy is the danger, which is absolutely ludicrous.
I agree.
Nothing entices a nutcase with a gun, the bad guy with the gun, to go into an area more than when they see this is a gun-free zone, because they know there'll be no resistance. If they know there's someone there who's trained with a firearm, they're either going to think twice or they're going to be stopped in their tracks.
And I've also
could go to Albany. Let me just finish this.
Yeah, go ahead.
You could go to Albany and get a law that would require that every school have a law enforcement type officer, whether they're retired or to a private security firm, as long as they're properly trained to have such a firearm. But that does not exist at the moment.
That's correct. That's exactly my point.
Someone to sponsor that bill, and you have to overcome a great deal of political correctness that still exists, and a lot of editorialists who would try to shoot you down, but it would be the right thing to do.
On that point, Steve, this is Dave Zier. Hi.
Hey, Dave.
Maybe politically, it's a good time, because the problem before was that the Democrats in the Assembly would never, ever modify the SAFE Act.
Absolutely.
So maybe, with this politically charged issue right now, there's an opportunity.
There's a tremendous amount of, there's a tremendous amount of politics in Albany, between Democrats, Republicans, Independent Democratic Conference.
It's
There's
exasperating.
also a funding. You also have to remember, and Steve, who was an assemblyman at one point, I believe, right? Steve, you were an assemblyman at one point.
Yes, back in 2001.
So Steve will know
That's
this.
Manny Villar, by the way, Steve. Manny Villar.
Steve will know this as well as I do, is that if you're going to place a mandate on school districts, where's the funding for it? So the funding has to come somewhere. Is that going to come from your local municipal government, from your county government, your school districts? Is it going to be a state reimbursement? Is it going to come at an expense of something else? So it sounds like a no, and it really is a no-brainer, easy thing to think of.
So
the moment you get north of here, it's going to be a whole entirely different story.
Just to drive us back to the SAFE Act. The SAFE Act limited the amount of ammunition you can carry in a clip, correct?
Yep.
That's really what it boiled down to. That's it. Didn't delineate it from us carrying our weapon and being able to carry maximum load, correct?
Correct.
So for that purpose and for our ability to be able to, as a public, as a nation, as parents, forget about politics. Take the politics out of it. Mm-hmm. As a nation, we are those 17 lost souls' voice. We have now the opportunity. Eric opened us up before and said to us that this is all going to disappear sooner or later.
It's not going to disappear with me, and I'll tell you that right now.
It's going to disappear until the next shooting.
It's not. As a matter of fact,
I'm generally not a fan of the unfunded mandate myself either, because it becomes a problem, a hardship for a lot of districts. I would like to see, even if, and I don't know how practical it is, how we have the air marshals?
Yeah.
Nobody knows what flights they're on, and nobody knows who he is. Nobody knows
that
who's
was one of
carrying
the
the
things,
gun.
Mary, that's a great point, because I in the last couple of days, I've spoken to a few educators, local educators in local high schools, and they're against the guns, and they're saying, you know what the problem is that the bad kids are going to know that these security guys have the guns on them, and they're going to take them away, and they're going to shoot everybody up. And my rebuttal was, well, you know what? We have 1 million uniformed officers across this entire country, and a majority of them working in bad neighborhoods, high crime neighborhoods. When was the last time you heard of a police officer's gun taken out of his holster? And that's exposed. Yeah. Okay, and
that is a great point.
Right?
That is a great point, and it drives home this the problem that there's a culture within the school boards that somehow arming the trained officer is the problem when it is the line of defense.
Well,
but
that's
the other
happened
thing
in
I wanted to
California.
mention is on the mandate side. Listen, I run the Center for Cost-Effective Government, and one of our biggest things is fighting state mandates. But in this case, I don't really think you're talking about a big cost involved, if any, because these schools are already hired. They already have hired the law enforcement people there for the most part.
And they would carry their gun.
It's just a matter of giving them
Just
the
arming
authority
them.
to be armed. Now, that doesn't cost a lot of money. It's just a matter of giving them the authority and stop blocking them from having the wherewithal to stop a killer.
That's the root of
within
the issue.
school.
Yes.
That is definitely the root of the
And
entire
I just
issue.
got to chime in here for a second. We got on the chat room, which is going wild here. Heather Claire Lander, she's over there in England. She says, would it be possible to train teachers on reading the signs?
Absolutely.
Jen from Virginia says, how do we make our kids feel safe when parents are scared about our kids at schools now? Cindy Bella says, she says, I work for the Three Village School District, which is one of the most secure districts in the state of New York. We are either active or retired law enforcement only. This should be across the board at all districts. Carrie Bigelow Regano, I hope I'm saying your name right. She says, I got a call today that there was a threat in the Samoset Sachem schools.
Yeah.
I know this happened in another school today as well over there in Port Jeff. There was
Getting,
actually
getting back to.
There's so many people.
listen,
These are mothers and parents
getting
and talking
getting back
about
to,
safety.
To Cindy Bella saying that
Yeah.
that Three Village School District is one of the most secure school districts and it's law enforcement only. Yes, but there's nobody carrying firearms.
Right.
So I don't care. You could have Navy SEALs securing that building.
But without the weapon.
Without their weapons, you cannot stop an active threat with
Yep.
a firearm. That guy comes
Don't-
in with an assault rifle.
Yep.
A truck at
Well,
dismissal.
so
Anything.
listen,
Yep.
so school deaths, student deaths have been occurring since the 1700s in America. The Pontiac Indians
It happened
went
in the
into a
Amish country.
schoolhouse and killed 9 people, in the 1700s. And this guy in 1925, I believe, 1927, went into Andrew Kehoe went into an elementary school with dynamite and killed 38 children and wounded 58. So it's really not just the mechanism. And I know, an AR has a higher muzzle velocity and does more damage, and I get it. But this kid could have done this with pistols. He could have done with various.
He could have done with a truck.
This is not a discussion of what could have been used and
No.
what could
Right.
not
So
have been
my
used.
argument
It's an
is,
evil-
it's,
an
to
evil
me,
person.
it's a mental health issue.
Correct.
It's a family issue, and I bet if you go into all of the school shootings in the United States in the last 30 years, I bet you over half of these kids are medicated.
More than half.
And
The numbers are actually
Virginia
more than
Tech.
half.
I want to.
And so-
I want Don to speak on something.
So
I
what
know
can New
where his
York
head's
State
at right
do
now.
legislatively
wait, I
also
know
to
Mr.
address
Levy-
the mental health issue
Let me
with
just say,
weapons?
Steve Levy has to go. I know Mr. Levy can only stay on with us for a few minutes, but I
Thank
want
you, Mr.
to
Levy.
Bye,
thank you, Steve.
Steve.
Steve,
Thank
is
you,
it-
Steve.
final comment, Steve? Anything you want to say before you take
Yeah,
your
thanks for having me, guys. Let me just make this final comment as far as allowing the trained officers to have a gun. Even if you wanted to submit that this argument that a gun is going to be taken out of the holster of the professional in the school, all right, how about this as a compromise? At least allow a gun or a number of guns to be held in the main office, whether it's in a secure place, that if there is some trouble brewing in the school, at least they're accessible for the trained individual. So there's
It's
no
not
reason
accessible.
at
It's
all
on the other side
why
of the
we
building.
can't have some apparatus set up so that trained professionals could have a gun so that they can protect our children in these
Yes.
crazy times.
And
So that's my thoughts.
Listen,
Let me throw something in there. So the power of perception, just by having armed personnel at the school, is power achieved. Power perceived is power achieved. So the perception of power and thwarting any type of threat at a school, just by having armed personnel, whether it be law enforcement or retired coming home military. Very important that we put men and women retiring from the military back home on the job at the schools armed. Simple as that.
There was a thing out there yesterday. There was actually a thing out there yesterday that somebody put out a post that said, with all the veterans that are unemployed,
Right.
let's hire the veterans too.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Steve Levy. Thank you.
Steve, Ed
Thank you
Munoz
very much,
here.
Eric.
Listen,
Appreciate
Steve,
that.
I'd like to get in touch with you off the air at some point, and maybe you and I can meet and discuss some things further, in regards to the arming of our security guards in our schools.
Absolutely.
Thanks for taking the
Eric's
time,
got my
Steve.
number. Call me. Let's try to get in touch with some state senators to make it happen.
All right,
Thanks,
Steve, thank you so
Levy.
much.
Thank you, Steve.
Don,
Bye-bye,
did
Steve.
you want to say
Guys,
something?
What I'd like to bring something up here, and all the issues we're talking about as far as mental health, as far as changing legislation, that's all good, and it's all got to be part of a multi-pronged attack plan. However, you're walking down the street, you see a 12-year-old boy laying on the side of the road, and he's bleeding profusely from a stomach wound. You don't stop and ask what caused the wound. You don't stop and ask, was he shot? Was he stabbed? Was he hit by a car? You stop the damn bleeding. And I think what we need to do initially, we need all this other stuff. We have to get these things moving. I'm a tactical guy. I've spent
It's
pretty much my
tactics and then
entire
there's strategy,
career
right.
teaching people how to stay alive or keeping them alive. Right now, what we need to do is to get programs in place that the schools can do right now. They can get on the phone. They can call our offices. There are a number of people they can call. I'm not trying to drum up business. They can call anybody they want as long as it's a professional. They need to have emergency response plans in place.
No question about it.
They need to
Emergency
have
preparedness is-
a TAT, threat assessment team, which
Yes.
if it had been in place with this shooter, there's a chance this last shooting would have been prevented.
To that credit, there is now software that's available that collects analytical data of anybody that's posting any negative comments towards a threat.
Algorithms, too, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
All based on algorithms.
Based on the carnivore. from the
Correct.
FBI.
But they also need to know, it's a fact. I'm a retired cop, so I have nothing but and most of us are, nothing but the utmost respect for the police departments. But it is a fact. The average active shooter incident is over in 4 to 5 minutes.
Done.
The average response time for a breach of an entry by the police is anywhere from 8 to 10 minutes.
And Don, we talked about that too. Okay, so the first line of defense with the police department is going to be the local sector cars, all right? And how many can get to a school, and that quick? And then emergency services is based out of the center of the island, and if they have to get out to, the North Shore or, everything's a half hour, 20 minutes.
So Ed, let me ask you this. What if we drafted up, based on the comments from today's show, a list of, tactical response things that need to be done and the schools have to do
Don
right
and
away?
I would be
approach
willing
the
to sit with you
political
guys.
side
I
of
think
it.
it's a great idea.
Absolutely,
Can I-
we'd be
can I
willing to
s-
sit
can I
with you and
speak to
draft
that-
that up.
Can I speak to that a second? Because I spoke with somebody yesterday who attends one of the local colleges, no names, and their lockdown drill, there's several buildings, no PA system, and the cell phones spotty service at best on the campus. Their plan is, in the event of a lockdown, a security guard goes from building to building and knocks on the classroom door.
With a
and-
code word?
No, and says, "We're on lockdown."
Don,
Okay.
talk
Which is
about that.
That is unacceptable.
It's completely unacceptable.
It's from the Stone
completely
Ages.
unacceptable.
It is from the Stone Ages. What gets me is in 2013, the U.S. government released a report that was compiled by research from Homeland Security, Secret Service, FBI, and FEMA. And one of the things that it said in that report was it highly recommended that every school have a TAT in place, that every school have an emergency response plan in place. And this is 2013 we're talking about. Every school do active shooter training. If you do not have your staff, your faculty, your teachers, and your students trained in how to respond to an active shooter incident.
Correct.
Realizing that in those 4 minutes, the only people that are going to save them are themselves, they're going to die. And I just want to say one more thing. The question that Steve was posed to Steve, are our children on Long Island safe? The answer is no.
absolutely
The
not.
only,
I agree.
what they are
I
is
agree.
they're fortunate.
We're
because
lucky.
by the grace of God,
lucky.
we have not had this here. And I'll tell you, you can take it to the bank, it's coming. Sooner or later, it's going to happen.
How long
on
have I
Long
been
Island.
saying to you, Don, that it's only a matter of time? Since everything's been from Vegas all the way out here, now it hit Florida. How soon, sooner or later, God forbid it happens, it's going to
There is
happen
a
here?
district here who hasn't had multiple lockdowns.
Correct. Yep.
Over threats
All the time.
already.
But the problem is
Listen,
it's only...
these school districts, okay, are, and I was researched this, these school districts have more fire drills, 2 to 1, than lockdown drills.
Parkland had
mandated
one in the
by
morning.
law.
Parkland had one early in the morning.
This is the stupid part about
That
this.
has
The
to
fire
change.
drills are mandated by law.
Right.
They're mandated by law.
Right.
Lockdown, active shooter
Here's-
drills are
here's-
mandated by no one.
We talked about this at great length on our shows.
Yeah.
Doing an active shooter, a run, hide, fight is what Homeland Security is recognizing. I know you guys teach it. I teach it.
Right.
You know, the
But
first.
that's not good enough.
But here's the thing: if you're going to do this drill, it has to be done right. And the number one thing that children have to do is they have to recognize the sound of guns.
Correct.
Okay.
Recognize the
and we
threat.
do it with starter pistols, or you do it with blanks. Those parents, majority of those parents would be like out of their mind.
How many times have you heard after the shootings when a student says, "Oh, I thought somebody was banging on
They
the
said
locker"?
they thought it was balloons
Every
going
single
off
one.
on Valentine's Day in Parkland.
And they don't know. They're not trained. And there was a story about a custodian who was steering kids down another hallway
And he
because
was steering them right in the line of fire.
because he heard the echoing and nobody knew where the shots were coming from. So that has to be practiced.
Right.
It's
That
not
has
only-
to be taught.
You know,
How are you
they-
gonna-
they do.
How are we going to sell
Well,
this?
this
to the
is
school
your
districts?
your biggest problem. This is going to be your biggest problem. Is every school district, every private school, every college campus, they do what they think they ought to do. There is no state mandate. There is no state
But
mandate.
fire drills are.
Fire drills are.
When was the last time
Fire
that
drills
we
are.
that a teacher or a
Probably
student
not-
lost their life in a fire?
Probably not in 100 years.
So that was my
We
question.
started this conversation with
You
that.
know, I would take exception to that, just in one way, in all due respect. They don't even do what they think they ought to do.
Correct.
They think
Think
they
about it
do
that way.
what
Very
political
true.
correctness
Yes,
tells them to
that's
do,
right.
or what political influence
That's
tells them to do.
absolutely correct.
I was retained by the Knox School, which is a private school in Nissaquag. When the new head of school took over, she actually had nightmares at night because they had no security provisions. We're talking about a private school here. Some of these kids are children of wealthy
With a lot
parents.
of guns.
And so for a year, I went in and not only set up the emergency response plan and the TAT and all of that, but also instructed the faculty and staff. 2 months later, they called me back and said, we need you to do a program for the students. And so what we do, and if you know what you're doing, it's not hard.
Right.
You teach the kids according to their age group.
Right.
Absolutely.
So the high school students got one course of instruction,
Sure.
the middle school got another. They're not going to be traumatically affected if you do it the right way.
And there's no political correctness when it comes to the level of being able to talk to a child.
Manny, let me ask you a question. So like your experience in the legislature all these years, and you know, I have some experience with it too. And what do you think the unions are, how they're going to respond, and how do you think, you know?
You mean the police unions?
No, the school unions
Okay.
and the teachers
You know what?
association. So
I think the unions will be, in this particular case, just as long as you focus on
Yeah.
the public safety component of it, I think they're going to be favorable. I think the United Teachers Federation, the UTF, what I think they call it,
UFA,
whatever, because there's two organizations here. But I think they'll be fine. The police unions obviously will be in favor of this. I mean, I'm speaking off cuff here, but
yeah.
and
And the other thing I wanted to ask you is about the police unions too. Like, what about the concept of having people in the schools, whether they're retired police or military or not, will the police departments and the union have concerns?
Well, absolutely.
About, you know,
We actually,
them being
we
civilians
actually
in the
fought,
schools
we
and being
we
armed.
actually
Let's
fought.
go back. Let's go back to the 1970s when Israel first started arming their own teachers.
Yes.
All right. Right after every single school shooting in Israel, Israel then instituted that the teachers can be trained
It's a great
and
point.
armed.
Great point.
And they have military experience because everybody in that country has had at least 2 years.
At least
of
2
experience.
years.
at least
Yep.
2 years.
At least 2 years
And
of
can
handling
that be an option
and
of
being around a
legislation to
weapon.
have the teachers voluntarily willing to take firearms training and to be?
Absolutely. We get calls all the time from teachers, oh, you teach how to handle a gun? Absolutely. We'll be more than happy to show them.
The teachers want it. It's the administrators in the school districts that won't get on board. I have
And
tried
Because of
for
the
years.
political incorrectness of having a gun on
I'll
school.
be honest with you, and this is just my experience from dealing with the legislature. You're going to have a lot more luck trying to get active and retired police officers in there than
And
you will
military.
and military. But you got to understand, on the military scope, they still have to come in and they have to be trained in all
And
the
vetted,
level of
correct.
state laws and all the things that apply. So with
But
an
then
active,
again, so does
with
a
an
retired
active,
law enforcement officer. He has to go through the same exact training
with an
as well.
active with an active police officer, even a retired police officer, just as long they're here from New York State, they're not from out of state. They already have a degree of understanding. They have a degree of understanding in all the relevant laws.
I could
that,
actually.
using
I could
deadly
actually see the
physical
use
force.
of military guys and women coming back and having a special tactical team where they're in a centralized location.
Like Don had said,
in
a
the school
TAT
district,
team, correct, a threat assessment team.
and having retired cops in the schools, and knowing, like you said, knowing the laws and having that military group, just because the emergency services, if there's an active shooter and that guy has multiple rounds or the woman has multiple rounds, you need to take that threat out. And at least you have a tactical team that's military trained, responding
Absolutely.
faster than emergency services.
In what we teach situational awareness, and ultimately, if by having this type of personnel on school grounds, their head will be on a swivel. They'll be able to keep their eyes on the children, eyes on the door.
Yep.
My wife and I were talking about it last night. Ultimately, situational awareness is really, if you want to drill it down that far. Between recognizing what mental health issues are and having situational awareness, I think we could save lives just by dealing with those two issues alone.
Okay, we have a caller.
Who do we have?
Who do we have on the line, Eric?
We have a woman by the name of Debbie Peters who would like to make a statement here. Debbie, go ahead. You're live on the air. Go ahead.
Hi, Debbie.
Hi, Deb. This is Ed Munoz
Hi,
from
how are
David's
you?
here. Everything matters.
My dog's barking. Hang on, I'm sorry. On Halloween, I was at the Selden campus at Suffolk Community College, and there was a real lockdown. It was not a drill. No one knew what to do. My professor was in the bathroom, had no idea when she came out what was going on. People were running up and down the hallways. There were students that were walking, had no idea. Our doors didn't lock. It was complete chaos there. And then an email came out stating that they had taken care of the situation. It wasn't anything serious. But next time, we might not be so lucky.
Well, you know what it is, and just by your sharing your story, I'll tell you right now, it doesn't seem that Suffolk Community College has emergency preparedness plan, and they don't have the proper threat assessment, to their buildings, and it looked like there was chaos. It looks like if you're telling me, what transpired and nobody knew what was going on, lack of communication, that's big. So, you could do a lockdown and lock everything down.
Post 9/11, the communications between quasi forces has improved greatly. In that instance alone, you had the Port Authority, you had NYPD, FDNY, and then after, and looking down at it and saying, okay, what did we do wrong? What can we do better? We have that same opportunity right now.
Well, it's similar to like when SOCOM was formed in the military, when we had Desert One, when our planes crashed between the services in the Iranian desert, and then the Navy SEALs died when we invaded Grenada. It fought because the air traffic controller for the Air Force was on Zulu time, and the guy in the SEALs was on a different time, and they dropped the boat into the rough ocean in the dark, and these guys drowned, and it propelled Congress to coordinate the services. So is there anything that can be done? Do you think that would help between the police, the troopers,
You know what it boils down
the
to?
county government?
Real simply, it boils down to communication.
Yep.
Right at the most minute and rudimentary level of being a parent. That's what it truly boils down to, communication.
Can I just, Deborah, you still there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I just want to give you it from just a real practical standpoint. The Suffolk County Legislature meets once a month on a Tuesday morning. The next meeting is March 6th at 9:30 a.m. If you can get yourself and a few students to show up there, you can sign up, you can speak to them, you get to speak to them for 3 minutes, uninterrupted, and you need to tell them that story, because that's where it's going to start. You need to go to the county legislature and let them know about this, because they're interested in your safety. I bet they have no idea that this even happened.
Debbie, I'm glad you brought...
When I tell you, and I'm an older student, and I just could not believe the way things were handled. And then people were telling you, we'll get back in the classroom. People were saying to meet someplace else. And then the students that were walking around that had no clue as to what was even going on. It was very scary. What did you say that was?
One of the important things, and we are talking about issues that need to be addressed, but again, it comes back to the fact that the time limit, it's all about time. Those 4 to 5 minutes, there is not going to be anybody there to help you except you. So in a situation like you're describing where nobody knew what to do, unfortunately, that is more the norm than the exception. Because there is not enough training.
It's your responsibility to get trained and understand what to do in a situation.
And you know, again, you're looking at a community college where you have all adults, and it's college, so you have more of an opportunity to defend yourself, and when you look at the elementary schools, and again, we go back to the not having the education and the resilience to train our children in these active shooter cases. You have a better chance at the community college level to survive. You can run, you can do things, and I mean, most people could.
You do, but Ed, one thing I want to point out, following on that line and addressing Debbie's question here, if where you are, and this goes for whether you're at a college, whether you're in a high school, whether it's at your workplace, if where you are has not provided you with the training to survive an active shooter incident, and if you are not trained, if you're not prepared, you are going to panic. There's a 10-80-10 rule. In any emergency situation, 10% of the people are going to do exactly the wrong thing and die immediately. 10% will know what to do and they'll survive. The other 80% are deer in the headlights. So if the college hasn't trained you, if the college hasn't trained their staff to know what to do, then I implore you to get the training yourself. You can either call our offices, you can call people like us who do this kind of training, or at the very, very least, research yourself. Go online, go on YouTube, and see what happens in active shooter drills.
Or you can even go to the Homeland Security website.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that. You have FEMA, you have Homeland Security. If you're sitting on your phone, instead of checking Facebook every 3 seconds, use your phone to do the research on how to stay alive.
Let me ask you a question.
There's a Homeland Security video. It's put out
And I know
Houston.
too.
It's called Run, Hide, Fight. It's an outstanding video.
Hold on, Debbie. Hold on one second.
Debbie, hold on 1 second.
We stayed away from the windows. I know they say lock the door, but there was no way to lock the door.
Oh, but Debbie,
So
hold
people
on.
were coming in,
There are
not
ways
knowing
to
what
lock
was
that
going
door.
on.
Block it with a
Like, you
desk,
have
block
to,
it with a
you know,
chair,
you have to get
block it with
the-
anything you can.
Listen, they sell these bars now.
We
Steel
carry
bars.
them, we carry them.
And that's the greatest thing for a classroom.
Was it lock into the door jam?
It goes
the door jam,
or
it
into-
actually goes over the scissor part.
or it can go into the actual foundation of the
into
floor.
the foundation.
Portable door lock?
Yes.
Yep.
I
It attaches right next to the door
And you pull it out and slam it in.
and slam it right to the bottom
Debbie,
of the door,
thank you.
slide it over the door.
So like,
Debbie, thank you for your phone call, Deb. Thank
Thanks
you.
for the call, Debbie.
Thank you, Debbie.
I'm sure you cover this when you do your trainings, but from a psychological standpoint, as soon as something unreal happens in your world, you sit there you could be sitting there for minutes
Don
saying,
talks
what's
about-
going on,
it's
this
not even
can't
a
be
minute.
happening.
Seconds actually turn into minutes.
Well, that's what I
and
mean,
seconds
yeah,
feel
yeah.
like minutes. Don,
If you don't respond within the first few seconds, there's a very good chance you're going to die. One of the things that we teach in these courses, it's not just about knowing how to lock that door. It's not just about knowing how to take your belt off and put it over the top of
how
the
to
door to
deal
keep it
with-
from opening.
How about this? How about communication with the students, knowing that if this guy enters the room and he's continuing to shoot, all of a sudden there's a pause, there's a gap. That means he's out of ammo.
Right.
And he's reloading. And at that point,
we go through.
we have to have a
you look
code
at Colin
word and we
Ferguson.
attack him.
You look at Colin Ferguson, who literally was able to unload.
Yes.
2 times.
2 times.
Yep.
Right.
He used 3 magazines, so
Before
it's
somebody
2
got
times
up and
he
did
stopped.
something.
Right, but that's the thing.
Who was
that-
mentally ill, bought his gun legally in California.
Yeah.
But those kids, those kids and those college students, they have to know. They have to know that, hey, there's a stop in the. I hear the shooting, pop, 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 pop. All of a sudden, there's a pause. You know what?
When we
have to tell each other.
But Ed, it's not going to happen unless you have
trained.
another factor involved. Training, yes, but it's also very, very important that the mindset that you have. We have to teach these kids, which is what we teach when we do this stuff. You have to teach anybody, whether it's an adult or a child, you do not let yourself be killed. Right. You have to have that
alive.
survivor mindset that you will do whatever whatever it takes to survive, that you are going to survive. Without that, you're going to die.
I just want to say, I just want to say one thing here, guys. Let me just say this: the question, and I'm loving what I'm hearing here, and some people are saying a lot of things on the chat room and everything like that. But as a parent and as a resident of Suffolk County, I want to say this. In answer to the question that I'm asking today, are our children safe on Long Island? The answer is no. They are not safe on Long Island. And you know what? Let me tell you something, all right? Right now, all these school districts, and I'm going to say this. I'm going to put this out there right now. I made an invitation to the school district where my children go to yesterday, okay? And they told me yesterday that there were going to be representatives, there were going to be assistant superintendent representatives here at the school. They backed out an hour before.
I was looking forward to that.
They backed out an hour before the show. The Hop Hog School District backed out an hour before the show. Now, let me just say this, okay? Let me just say this. They have a right to do that, okay? But if the school districts do not step up and understand that the people that they have right now and the security measures that they have in place, listen, you can have all the drills that you want. You can ring a bell and say, okay, go to the left, okay, go to the right.
I don't need that.
But these teachers are not trained to be able to listen. Ed and I had a discussion yesterday. I know what gunfire sounds like. Ed knows what you gentlemen know what gunfire sounds like. When you shoot a gun off in a hallway of a school, you're going to hear an echo. You had a custodian sending children to the left and ran them right into the gunman, okay, because he wasn't trained as to what he needed to do. So if the school districts here on Long Island do not step up and do something, if the Suffolk County College doesn't step up and do something, if the Parks Department, if the Suffolk County, the Park Police and the state, if all these people combined do not wake up and understand we are going to have a Sandy Hook, we are going to have a Parkland, we are going to have a Columbine.
Absolutely.
You know what? Enough of the games and the nonsense. It's not about the money, it's about people dying.
This show, we're focusing on active shooters.
Right.
We have a whole component of terrorism.
Right.
Okay?
Yep.
And terrorism,
We haven't even touched it.
we haven't even touched it.
That's
Let me
right.
tell you something.
Well, this is the first of many.
Right. But terrorists look for soft targets.
Yes.
And what is the softest target?
Elementary.
A New York State school, elementary school, and what do Americans value
We talk
most?
about
We
it
value our
on every
families,
show.
our children, and our
Yep.
lives, and our health.
Yep.
Right?
You know, we all lost friends and family in 9/11.
I know I did.
And it's here, it's in our yard.
Listen,
And,
it's-
you know, in Brentwood, they're laundering money through Bitcoin for ISIS.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and the Dunkin' Donuts.
So
funded
we
the
haven't.
Times
We're
Square
talking
bomber
about. We're
right
talking
here in
about. We're
Selden.
talking about active
Oh,
shooters.
Ed, Dave, not the Dunkin' Donuts. Don't ruin the Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah.
Right? Leave the Dunkin' Donuts alone.
We're talking about active shooters, but we really haven't even divulged.
I don't know how much time we have left on this show, but I'm going to say this, and I should hope that all of us as the panelists sitting at this table today, when we get up and we leave here, we think about this conversation that we took.
When do you want to meet again?
I'll be
Off
here
the air.
tomorrow.
Off the air.
I'll see you tomorrow. Okay.
I
See you
think,
right
I
after
think
we get out.
everybody needs to leave the table here and think about their individual strengths, how that they can contribute, and what action items need to be taken immediately, you know, tactically, and what issues in the schools and mental health and other issues can, you know, be, and, you know, it can go somewhere, you know, because.
I'm willing to say that what I do and what you do, there's an overlap there, and I
Absolutely.
would be willing to work with you.
I appreciate.
I just want to comment on what Eric just said, and what I said before in the answer to the question. No, our kids are not safe. But the question now is, how do we get the schools to allow us to make them safe? On my Facebook page last night, in response to the invitation to come down here, I put a rather long blurb on there, and one of the things that I said to anybody that follows me is you can't just leave it up to us. Parents, teachers, you need to contact your school administrators. If they won't make your kids safe, then vote them out of office.
Correct.
And put people in there who will.
I think we have a great foundation of men and women here that are willing to do what is necessary. I think we all have experience in certain areas, and I think what we need to do is we need to organize
reach out to our local
off the air, and
assemblymen.
let's get the first things first.
Gentlemen,
First,
I gotta
let's like you said, let's harden the target.
Stop the bleeding.
Let's get these retired cops and law enforcement, military. Let's get them the specialized training, and let's get them armed.
Now, you're meeting with Bill Murray, right?
Don't be afraid to say something. If you see something,
Well,
say something.
I got to tell you
Don't
that
be
the
hesitant.
Washington,
See something, say something, but they also have to do something.
Correct.
True, and
Correct.
the Washington,
the key.
the Washington Post, the Washington Post just came over the newswire. Their headline title is "Enough is Enough." As Florida City mourns school shooting victims, police search for answers. But listen to this. I'll just read you one paragraph. As a grieving community mourns the lives cut short in the school shooting rampage here, the lawyer representing the 19-year-old charged with the killings says he does not doubt his client's guilt, but he argued that this is their argument now. Wait till you hear this one, okay? The argument is going to be that the massacre could have been prevented had authorities recognized the repeated warning signs in the teenager's life. Okay.
Again, I said before, you can put the blame on mental health. You can put the blame
Well, it
on
might
gun
be
control.
both. It might be both.
It could be everything, but it really boils down to us as a community, as a society, taking responsibility and making people listen to what we have to say. Enough is enough.
The good people in our society have to fight the evil people.
You know, it's
The
as
best-
simple as the old adage, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Yep.
Yeah.
We live
and
in
the
a-
ability is out there. It's there. The
It's
tools
there.
are there. We could put stuff in place.
We could do this.
We can have, if somebody from one of the school districts called in today, and I'm not saying
Or
this for
even showed
business,
up today.
called in today, between us, we could put together a program for them within days that they could put
That's
into
right.
effect.
We could do a threat assessment
Just by
of their
talking
buildings.
to them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We
Exactly.
live in a state that just raised the age where a person is responsible for crime. They just raised the age so that a 16-year-old who commits a violent crime gets tried in
We passed
family
a
court.
law last year that
Family
anybody
court.
who sells drugs, an opiate drug, is also responsible for the person's death that they sold the drug to.
Right.
Well, there's so many issues, and there's so
Again-
many issues, and I think that, you know, the desensitization of sitting in front of the Xbox for 8 hours a day, no father figures in the household, the overprescription of medication, everybody's ADHD, and you know, a lot of these people probably wouldn't be if they were in a better structure in home. And, you know, so those are other issues, but, you know, how do you harden the schools now and keep the kids safe?
Arm our security
And that
guards.
should be our next move. Start with that.
A lot of the schools, the answer that a lot of the schools has is, let's suspend the kid, let's put him out, let's not worry about it anymore, it's not our problem, let's expel him. You know, they expelled this kid from Parkland, and 3 days later he bought a weapon. He had an AK-15 in a cabinet that his family knew was there, but he had the key, okay? He was on depressants, he was on medication, he had girl problems, he just lost his mom, his
He's
father
also
died.
he's
You
also
know,
an
this is-
evil human being.
He is, he's an evil human being, he really is. He's an evil human being, and it shouldn't happen.
Listen, and this is like this. It's like the perfect storm.
What about if parents out there, because if somebody's asking a question, if a parent, I'll address this to add it to you guys as well. Parents are asking, what about individual training? What about if the school district is not
We
willing to
offer
do?
it.
So if somebody wants to
Yeah.
have their family
We do-
understand,
we do
I mean,
the same
listen,
thing.
I would send my
what we do.
I would send my daughter, my 14-year-old,
I-
and Martin,
I have
8.
To, I have to tell you though.
Yeah.
When you're doing active shooter training, it's really more effective when every child is trained.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you have to communicate with each
But
other.
the problem
And-
is that
Even right
that
down
school
when you were
districts, the
training
school.
as a law enforcement officer, you trained with your fellow
That's
officers.
right. That's right.
Look,
Eric,
we-
in answer to your question, Friday, which is,
The 24th, right?
is it the 24th?
Yeah,
Yes.
Friday the 24th next week.
It's next Friday. We're holding a seminar
23rd.
open to the public
23rd,
on
thank you.
how to survive an active shooter incident. And we're focusing it because of what's going on and because of all the calls we've been getting.
Where are you doing it?
At the
Hop
office
Hog.
in Hop Hog.
How would you
It's
feel?
in Hop Hog, 150 Motor Parkway.
How would you feel about me guys coming there and broadcasting it live for you guys?
Fine,
Oh,
just
that would
come.
be
That would be
amazing.
That would be
What do you think,
amazing.
Ed?
Yeah, I'll be there.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I'll be
Yeah, I
there.
could.
It's
we'll
going to
broadcast it
focus
live, and I'll.
on.
We're in CPAC.
Oh, that's right. We're in
But
CPAC.
you could do it,
Right.
and I go to CPAC if
That's
you want
fine.
to split
Fine.
it up.
It's going to give,
We would love to
give
have
the
you.
tactics needed to survive a general active shooter incident, but most of it is going to focus on school shootings. It's going to focus on how you report the leakage, about
set
the
up a
necessity of
TAT
having a
team.
TAT team and an emergency.
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock on Friday evening.
Now, we use props, but the props, you can actually hear what a weapon will sound like.
And that was my point. And
That's
that's
great.
what, you know,
And-
you
and
could do lockdown drills all you want, but if you don't know what an active firearm sounds like,
And who's hosting this?
We are.
Who's it
We're
open to?
hosting it.
Radius
If anybody
Investigations
wants
and Hop
to, they could just Google Radius Investigations, And on the website, there'll be where they can reserve a seat. It'll
It's
have
an
all the
RSVP.
information,
What
the
is it,
date.
100 people can fit in that?
Yeah,
theater?
we have about
Go with
100 people.
100 people.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
it's limited to the first
We'll
100.
do an Everything Matters broadcast.
Broadcast from there, absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
Maybe every school superintendent.
I was just going to say,
We've invited
No,
them.
that's a great idea, Dave. I want to publicly, right now, on behalf of this panel, if everybody's okay with it.
Absolutely.
I want to publicly invite and/or challenge every public school superintendent and principal to come down and see me that night.
Even
and
if
listen
you're
to what we have
even
to
if
say.
you're retired and you still want to come and learn because you still have ties to your community, come.
We will now be known as the No More panel.
Yeah.
like
Okay,
Good.
I like
I
that.
like
Right?
that.
No
I
more
like that.
panel.
We're
The
not
group,
gonna
the
stand
group
for
I
this
started, the
anymore.
group that Ed and I started yesterday, I call it No More School Violence. We had in one day 74 people joined that group.
Yeah, I saw that yesterday.
No
All
more.
right. And the
That's
thing
it.
is,
we are the,
the
No
problem
More
is,
panel.
and
and,
the
we're going
pro-
to take this serious. And again,
I will be damned if I'm going to bury a child
Yeah.
because of a shooting
You
or
know,
because of
opening
any
up
other
this-
reason.
Opening up this segment and listening to that mother's anguish in her
Yes,
voice,
absolutely.
it got me teary-eyed.
I'm
It got
still
me-
teary-eyed.
It had the,
This isn't new. I'm sorry. to
No, it's
cut you
fine.
off.
Go right ahead.
This isn't new to Long Island. I remember 1958. My mother was in Sachem High School, which was Massapequa High School, which is now Massapequa High School.
Okay.
A guy walked into the bathroom with a shotgun and killed somebody. And there's been other incidents. So this is not new to Long Island, and it's going to happen again.
It's going to get worse.
And, you know, and back then, you know, they didn't have,
I'm being told Friday's the 23rd.
yes, it's the 23rd.
Thank you.
All right, but
I was going to say
listen,
that, but I think I gotta wait till
I'll
after.
get
I'm
this-
expecting to see
I'll be
everybody in
there.
this room there except for you.
I'll be
What we're gonna do is listen.
Yeah.
We'll even talk about it. Possibly having these guys back on Wednesday night.
We should do. Let me tell you what. I'll put this out there. I invite this to be like a monthly type thing where we can get together and say, okay, where have we gone in the last 30
I know I can
days?
speak for Don.
Who,
We're
who-
down- we're
who have we
definitely up for that.
contacted?
Absolutely.
What are we doing?
And,
You know,
Absolutely.
and my business partner is a retired lieutenant out of Highway 3, and I know he's
Yeah,
on
Kevin
board
Burke,
with this.
We
absolutely.
have a powerful vehicle, and everyone has to remember that we're on the internet. This goes out worldwide.
Right.
We have law enforcement
We
in
are
London
the
listening to
voice.
us.
We are the voice.
We have law enforcement around the country listen to us,
Well,
and
like
the show is growing rapidly. So
My wife's been a
Show
law.
Everything matters, and our mantra is that we're the voice of the common American, we're the voice of the middle class, and we're the voice of the first responders and our military.
No
Yeah,
more.
Absolutely.
That's
No
it.
more.
We're the
That's
No
it. The
More
No More
panel.
group. And I want to thank you all for joining us. Let me give you
Thank you
each
for
an
having
Let me
us.
give you each. Let me start with Manny. Of course, I'm sorry, Manny over there.
Yeah, I'm in the back
There
here.
you go, Manny. What would you like to say to everybody listening? What final thoughts can you give us?
Taking the topic matter, I think if anybody walks away and does anything from this, and we touched on it earlier, was that Homeland Security City of Houston video on YouTube, active shooter video. Just watch that. If you don't do anything
Run,
else out
hide,
of this
fight.
run, hide, fight. If you don't do anything else out of this conversation, just watch that. Take the 2 or 3 minutes after
Thank you,
the
Manny.
video and just
and
watch that.
thank you so much, Manny, and our panel. You know, Matt. You know, you guys are very insightful. Don, Mary. You know, we love what you do.
Mary, you
And,
want to close out with anything?
Yeah, just if I can get all social workery for a moment. You know, everybody, if you got kids, put your phone down. Put the internet down. Spend a day. Have a Sunday where there's a technology-free Sunday. Talk to your kids. Get to know them. Get acquainted with them. They have a lot to say, and you might be surprised what you hear.
No, it's great. And next Wednesday, Ed, on our show,
Yep.
we also have your friend from the Detroit News.
Yes, we
So
get-
maybe we can split it in half and cover this again.
That'd be great. Don, parting words?
What I would like people to understand is, you know, when things like this happen, a lot of talking heads get on there, and I have heard people say over the last couple of days, you can't stop violence like this. It's going to happen. There are just evil people. Yeah, there are evil people, and we've all dealt with them all our careers, but you can stop it. It just takes the right people to step
Resiliency,
up and do it.
too. Resiliency.
Absolutely. You don't give up. You're never out of the fight.
Matt?
So again, you know, I started this conversation sitting here, not knowing anyone here. It's been a pleasure getting to know everyone at this panel. Just want to say that first and foremost. It's good to see that my fellow community members are taking such an active interest in this. As a parent myself personally, I want to say thank you, honestly, from
Thanks
the
for
bottom of
coming
my
on.
heart.
A pleasure, and this is the start of a very long relationship.
As a security consultant, what I want the general public to understand and know that it's their responsibility to teach themselves, to learn, to grasp, to understand what it's going to take to keep our kids alive.
That's right. That's right.
Very simple.
You have any parting words, Dave?
Well, our hearts go out to all the families and the victims of what happened. I think everybody needs to have a real heart-to-heart with their children tonight. You know, this issue is not going to go away. We have to remember that these people who do this are evil people. But I think a lot of these shootings are preventable. I think a lot of these shootings are a result of a failed society and a moral fabric that's decayed.
That's right.
And I think part of it's fixable. So and the rest of it, we have to harden our targets so they can't
I agree.
so they can't get away with mass
Fortify
murder.
that
So
target.
We have our
Fortify
work.
it.
No more panel has
Don't be a
their work.
victim.
I'll say this. I want to thank everybody truly from the bottom of my heart for coming. Short notice, midday. I know we all have things to do. But this is the first step in recognizing that we need to come up with solutions. I want politics out of this. You know, you go on social media, you watch the news, right away they want to attack the gun manufacturers, they want to attack the sale of guns, and, listen, let's keep politics out of it. We need to secure our children, make sure they're safe first and foremost. You know, there are people that get in cars drunk and kill people. You know, are we banning cars? You know, so let's get the focus away from the guns. Let's get the focus away. Let's get the focus on mental health, the restructuring of the family, the family component.
Yep.
You know, and we need to come together and compromise. We're so polarized and so divided. This country, everything you turn on is divisive. Okay, we have to start scaling down the political correctness, and we got to bring everybody together and use reason, logic, and common sense. And I think that's where
Very
this
well
country,
said. Very
that's,
well said.
that's
Yeah.
where this country
Very well
has
said.
really fallen.
Very well
Okay,
said.
so Ed, you're listening to Everything Matters, everyone out there. We're here at JVK Studios. We're just outside of Manhattan in Suffolk County. Spread the word to your friends to listen in. And today we had a special roundtable discussion on how safe are our children on Long Island. We're going to continue this. We're going to get our legislative bodies involved.
No doubt about
and
it.
Ed, why don't you take us out?
Yeah,
But
listen,
before you take us out, can I just make one statement here? All right, we have a lot of professionals in the room. We have law enforcement. We have mental health. We have people representative of the PBA. This is no joke, folks. Let me tell you something. With all the professionals in the room, the one thing I am is I talk. I do this for a living. All right, and let me tell you something. You can put this aside and you can think it doesn't mean anything or it's not going to go anywhere. Trust me, it is. We have people out there, and I'm going to rile up all the parents. I'm going to tell you this. Here's what I want you to do. If you're a parent of a young child, or even if it's a teenager, or if you whatever it is, the next time that child leaves for school, I want you to walk to their room. I want you to look into their room, and I want you to think of the parents at Parkland and up in Connecticut right now that are looking in that room and thinking, that child is never coming home again. All right? God forbid that's going to happen. But unless you take that mentality, unless you realize that this could happen here, and unless you get on board with us and say
not
no,
immune.
you say no more,
immune.
no more. I don't want to be the one to have to say I told you so. I don't want to be the one to have to
And
come
you
to
know
a
what? Go into their rooms and know what they're doing. Like Eric,
Yeah, that's true.
Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris were making bombs in their $1 million house.
And don't be
in
afraid like
Denver-
that grandmother
in
out there in
Colorado.
the grandmother in California that turned in her grandson because he had he had in his logbook how he was watching all the people that were doing the shootings, and he had to make sure that there were no mistakes, and she found an AK-47 in his guitar case. You know, right here we had right now, as you heard, there's a bomb threat over at the Port Jeff Ferry. There's a kid that was arrested at Port Jeff High School last night because of a threat. It's real. This is real. It's gonna happen here. If you don't do something about it, if you're not aware of what to do, look, you can't stop it from happening, but you can know what to do when it does happen.
This is the roundtable. This is it. This is where it starts, and we're coming up with solutions. There's no more rhetoric. There's no more talk. There's no more talk.
I got to tell you, this is probably the first time in a long time that personally, professionally, and personally, I feel very comfortable just being amongst strangers, except for Don,
Right.
where I feel that we all have the same common interest and the same common goal.
There's no doubt about it, and it's the safety of our children. Without that, we have no society.
How can people? How can people reach you guys? I mean, what do you suggest? Because there's people asking how they can call or if there are phone number,
Why don't
websites.
you follow the Everything Matters website?
Yep.
Right.
Go to WLINY, www.wliny.com. Go to their website. That's where our show is listed.
Yep, and
You
we'll
can
have
also go to
all the information on the website.
Yeah.
Okay, and if anybody wants to join the panel, just reach out to us. Okay, you can reach out through the website.
And on Facebook, go to Everything Matters Radio with Ed Munoz and David Zier, and you can find our show.
And you
you can also go to our personal pages.
Yep. And Eric, let's start maybe we can start a website, a No More website.
No more.
And
No more.
And then what we'll do is we'll grow in numbers and listen, strengthen numbers.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, and that's how it ends. And
Thank you very much for
Listen,
having us
I want to
tonight.
thank everybody for showing up
Seriously,
here. It
thank
was
you very
really
much.
insightful. I'm Ed Munoz, my co-host David Zier. This is Everything Matters. We are the voice of the common American. We're the voice of the middle class. We're the voice of the first responders, and we're definitely the voice for the military, protecting us against evil all around this world, and there's a lot of it.
We'll see you next week, America.
We'll see everybody next week. Good night, and God bless.